The incredibly talented singer D'Angelo tragically passed away last week, and I've been thinking a lot about D'Angelo and his music and why he means so much to the music community. And I want to share some of my thoughts about what we can learn about him for artists today. Let's get into it. So as you know by now, D'Angelo, the legendary soul R&B singer, he passed away tragically from cancer on October 14th, and it's something that the entire music world, it really rocked everybody. I'm sure you saw on social media, whether it's artists, journalists, fans, people are really mourning this loss. And I think for so many of us, D'Angelo just has such a special place in our hearts. So you have to go back to when his first album came out. I think for most of us, Brown Sugar was really our introduction. I think some people in the know probably remember him from the Apollo. People back in Virginia might remember him from the talent show circuit. But by and large, most of us knew him from Brown Sugar. And it was such a seminal album. And the reason is it just sounded so good. You could tell the musicianship just from the beginning. This was someone who was a student of Stevie Wonder and Marvin, Smokey Robinson. I mean, who can forget his great rendition of Cruising, which I think is actually probably the best cover of that song. It really can go head to head with the original. But the minute you put on that album from start to finish, it just takes you to a different place. And at that time, he really was this very interesting confluence of soul and R&B, but he had kind of like a ruggedness about him. I saw a performance of his recently. I think it was from the Letterman show where he's like performing while wearing like a polo rugby, and that was just so D'Angelo and so of that time. So imagine being a young person around then, listening to that record, and then finding out that Brown Sugar's actually about weed. So that also gave it a crazy other dimension. Then records like Lady, the Lady remix, which I love. Shout outs to DJ Premier and AZ on that. But it was just very much the musicianship, and it pushed through. Women loved him, men loved him. I mean, this was someone who was just universally loved by fans and critics alike. But I think what people don't realize, the reason was, of course, D'Angelo's genius as a musician, but also just how meticulous he was, possibly to a fault. This was a guy who his label had to intervene because Brown Sugar wasn't getting done. This is how Angie Stone came into the mix because it was D'Angelo's publisher as well as his label head, Kedar Massenberg, who said, "We need a professional to come and help you finish this album." And Angie, RIP, has done interviews talking about how they were working till the final minute, like through the holidays. They're in the studio on Christmas, just finishing this record because this young kid, D'Angelo, was just a teenager at the time. He was so meticulous and so focused, but possibly to his own detriment because that artistic temperament, the artistic genius, sometimes when it's not bridled, it can just kind of, never get anything done. And I think that was something we saw throughout his career. He really cared about being a musician. So then you fast forward to Voodoo, which came out a few years later. And if you remember, the first few singles on Voodoo didn't do well. It was really a risk for the label to greenlight Untitled as a single because if you think about it, it doesn't even have like a title. So already that's a risk. And the song is a slow burn song. It's not something immediately you would say, okay, that's going to be on top 40 radio, that's going to cross over. And 99, I mean, this is like the era of the music video and MTV and TRL and all of those things. So I think it was really an amazing risk for the label to even let him do that as a single, greenlight a video. And I mean, who can forget that iconic music video? Billy Woodruff directing, and it was actually D'Angelo's then manager who came up with this concept of take off your clothes, we'll just lather you in baby oil, and your voice and your body is going to be the focus of this video. I think this might be the cheapest video in the history of music videos because outside of the baby oil and maybe getting his hair braided, I'm not really sure what the costs were. And this was the video where I mean, I remember very clearly as a teenager seeing that video and just, kind of looking down. I think we all remember what that was about. But this really catapulted D'Angelo into a sex symbol. And sadly, this was something that really kind of added to him being this tortured artist because soon fans and the media and the industry, they were focused on him and his body and his good looks and not on his voice and his musicianship. So many times we talk about women through the lens of being called sex symbols and how they feel like it diminishes their artistry or really puts them in a box. But it's the same for men too. And imagine someone who's like a legit musical genius, can play instruments, write songs, write records, being basically just minimized into, okay, you're really hot and that's the role you're going to play. I can only imagine for someone like a D'Angelo who already wasn't really on board with the way the music industry was running, the schedule that he had to be on, now being told, okay, you have to be a sex symbol, and just the pressure to stay in shape, to always look a certain way, have the right personal life. And that was something that really affected him and Angie Stone, that he had to put up this image. And for a lot of artists, they dream about wanting to be the superstar and wanting to be the sex symbol, but that comes with a lot of pressure, not just to them, but to the people around them. And I think for a true musician like D'Angelo, it really affected him. It doesn't surprise me that it took him, I think, 14 years to then drop Black Messiah. He became a notorious recluse. I think there were some people in the industry, such as like a Questlove or Raphael Sadiq, people who were close to him. But from an industry perspective, once I got into the music industry as a journalist, I've only seen him once in real life, and it was around that Black Messiah time. And it was very clear that he was struggling with a lot of his personal demons, things like addiction, but I'm sure just also the pressures of this changing music business. And all of this just has me thinking, right now we're all celebrating the life and the music and the genius of D'Angelo. But I also feel like as an industry, we've gone so far away from signing these true artists, developing them, and helping them because I really think that somebody like D'Angelo, he needed that guidance, and maybe all he had in him was 3 albums because that's really all he wanted to give the music business. And afterwards, he creates for himself, similar to like a Lauryn Hill or Prince or Sade, people who are like, I'm a musician first and a working musician second, which I can't be mad at. Like they've all earned the right in their own ways to do that. But I just feel like as we look towards the future of the music industry, who is that next D'Angelo? Who is that next artist who is just blessed as a musical genius and then cultivated, put into the rooms with the right people, and given not only the independence and autonomy to create the way they want, but also the resources to kind of help steer them and guide them as they need. And I just wonder if we're ever going to get back to that time. And it's funny, I was looking at D'Angelo's Wikipedia before this video and I was shocked. His albums didn't sell a lot. I mean, it was the physical era, so keep that in mind. But Brown Sugar, Voodoo, I mean, these are just platinum records, which again, nothing to look down upon, but it wasn't like he was some multi platinum artist, hit maker, top 40 records. No, but if you think about it, his music was just so important and it really marked this seismic shift within the music industry and the music landscape. So that's another thing to always think about. And I know I've said this on this channel before, but it always bears repeating. Things like numbers and metrics and sales, these are fine things for people in the industry to care about. But as a fan, you just need to love the music and the art and the artistry. Like that's what matters. First week sales, certifications, that means nothing. Like by that, D'Angelo would probably be forgotten if we're just looking at sales and hits and that's what the metric you're going on. But instead, this is music that's supposed to touch your soul, speak to you, be the soundtrack to your life. I mean, these records are going to be played till the rest of time. I know that because I think Brown Sugar gets at least a weekly play in my rotation, like always. It's just one of those albums that I've never steered too far from. And I think that's something that I would just love to see more from the industry and from fans, really embracing artists, people who take their time, people who might try something and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, experimenting. I think those are all things that we can learn from D'Angelo and from his legacy about being a true artist. But what are your memories of D'Angelo? Are you a day one Brown Sugar fan? Where were you when that Voodoo video dropped? I know you remember. Everyone remember. That was like breaking the internet before that was a term. I want to know your thoughts about D'Angelo. Share them in the comments.